Reuters is reporting that Jeb Bush took a pledge to place a freeze on all new federal government regulations if he becomes president. All new federal government regulations. They say the following, quote, "For Bush, regulatory reform is a key part of a broad economic agenda that he says would be aimed at generating annual U.S. economic growth of 4%. Complaining that the cost of complying with regulations is costing U.S. businesses billions of dollars, he would require that any new regulatory costs be offset by rollbacks in regulations elsewhere. Bush will cite in particular the cost of complying with the Dodd-Frank Wall Street reform legislation enacted after the near collapse of the financial system in 2008 and 2009. So let's stop and think about this here. What he's doing is he's pledging to take away the only systemic fix put in place after his brother crashed the economy. Now, it's a little more complicated than that because, of course, Bill Clinton also played a role in helping to crash the economy. He's the one that signed the repeal of Glass-Steagall, for example. He did some deregulation in his own right. And actually, it's virtually every president from Reagan and on that kind of chipped away at efficient regulation of the marketplace and chipped away at the social safety net, among other things. So they all share some blame in this. But with Dodd-Frank, what we have is a little itty-bitty fix. It's like a Band-Aid with some ointment on it over a gaping, gangrenous wound. Is it going to fix the problem? No. But is it a step in the right direction? Better than having it no ointment on it, no Band-Aid? Yes, it is better than that. Jeb Bush is coming along and saying, let's get rid of the Band-Aid, let's get rid of the ointment, and let's jam this sucker in reverse and go the same direction that my brother went when he crashed the economy. What bugs me to no end about this is Republicans apparently never learn, and the media never calls them out on the fact that they never learn. Guys, it's not just a matter of opinion that trickle-down economics doesn't work. We have the history and the economic data to prove that it doesn't work. So, for example, in the late 19-teens and early 1920s, guess what we implemented? This right-wing economic idea of cut taxes for the rich, deregulate, and what ended up happening? We had the stock market crash and the Great Depression in 1929. Now, after that, we had Roosevelt. We implemented some liberal economic reforms, or I should say progressive economic reforms. And we were able to have a relatively stable system for a while there. But then you had Ronald Reagan come in the 1980s, and he did the same thing they did in the 19-teens and the 1920s, where you cut taxes for the rich and you deregulate, and what happened? The same thing. You had boom-bust cycles. Reagan left his predecessors with a mess. So what happens is, typically when you cut taxes for the rich and you deregulate, you have a tremendous takeoff in wealth where it looks like, oh my God, the good times are never going to end. Just like the Roaring '20s. That's why they called it the Roaring '20s. Oh my God, economic wealth for everybody. But it wasn't real wealth. It was fake. The credit was too loose. There was no efficient regulation of the marketplace. So you had the economy and the stock market take off, and then there was a fucking crash. Every single time throughout history you implement right-wing economics, the same thing happens. It's not steady, consistent, intelligent growth. You have essentially the smartest people in the room, the Wall Street CEOs, make horrible decisions to enrich themselves, and they screw over everybody else in the process, among other problems. So Reagan left us with a mess because of this economic ideology, and then you had George W. Bush, and again Clinton to a lesser degree, but they also screwed up the economy by doing the same thing. In Bush's case, cut taxes for the rich, do more regulation, and voila, in 2008, what happened? We had the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession. Obama and the Democrats do a little itty-bitty step in the right direction. There's a trillion loopholes in Dodd-Frank, but it's a little step in the right direction. And now Jeb Bush is saying, vote for me to bring back the shitty economic policies which created the problem in the first place. No thank you, Jeb. You're a joke. Step aside. We're done with Bushes.